Hi, Professor Grunlin here. Hey, let's get started on the urinary system. We will look at the overall functions of the system, then the structures, the physiological processes that produce urine, and finally how the kidneys are involved in homeostasis of blood pressure. One of the most important functions of the urinary system is filtering the blood, and related to that function is the excretion of waste and the regulation of the chemical composition of the blood, including the pH and the osmolarity. This function is vital. If the kidneys cannot do it, then you need to use dialysis in order to maintain life. Another important function is blood pressure homeostasis, both through adjusting the blood volume and by producing renin. The system has other interesting functions, such as producing the hormone erythropoietin, which stimulates red blood cell production, producing calcitrol, which is the active form of vitamin D, and the kidneys are one of the few organs in the body that can do gluconeogenesis, that is, making brand new glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. Relative to some of the other body systems, this one is actually pretty simple. It consists of 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, 1 urethra. The ureters, bladder, and urethra are designed to transport, or in the case of the bladder, store urine. They're just hollow with epithelial lining on the inside, which is surrounded by layers of muscle and then an outer layer of connective tissue. The structure of the kidneys, on the other hand, is much more complex and interesting. The kidneys are surrounded by protective layers of fat, and then they have a capsule and inside a cortex and a medulla. The medulla consists of renal pyramids separated by renal columns. These areas have a striated appearance, and that's due to an abundance of tubules. The apex of the tubules form the renal papillae, which drain urine into a funnel system. The minor calyces, the major calyces, the renal pelvis, and then into the ureters. The actual functional unit inside of the kidneys is called a nephron. Nephrons consist of a renal corpuscle, where blood is actually filtered, and then a series of tubules that adjust what has been filtered and produce the actual urine in the end. Since the major function of this system is to filter the blood, you probably already understand that the blood flow into and out of the kidney is very important. We'll study it in depth, but for this short introductory video, let's just focus on the smallest vessels. The efferent arteriole bringing blood into the renal corpuscle, the network of capillaries in there called the glomerulus, where the filtration actually occurs, and then the efferent arteriole taking blood out of that renal corpuscle. Inside those corpuscles, the exchange occurs across what's called a filtration membrane. It consists of fenestrated glomerulus capillaries and probably the coolest cells ever photographed, the podocytes. They cling to the surface of those capillaries and form filtration slits. Recall from previous videos that bulk flow in the capillary beds is the result of a pressure gradient. The hydrostatic pressure pushing fluids out of capillaries and the opposing osmotic pressure drawing fluids into the capillaries. Those same forces are at work here, except that instead of regular capillaries, here we have fenestrated capillaries, which allow much more exchange. Notice in the diagrams that the diameter of the efferent arteriole is larger than the diameter of the efferent arteriole. That's not an accident. It's real. It's what increases the hydrostatic pressure in those glomerular capillaries and drives the filtration of the blood. Cells and large molecules, like albumin and antibodies, can't normally cross that filtration membrane. But minerals, vitamins, sugars, amino acids, and all the other small molecules do get filtered and end up in the subcapsular space. That fluid is now called filtrate, and after some adjustments, that's what will become urine. The filtrate is now in a tubule called the proximal tubule, and in the process of becoming urine, it will pass through the loop of Henle, the distal tubules, and the collecting tubules. As it passes through those tubules, substances like sugars and calcium and sodium and amino acids will be reclaimed, that is, taken back up into the blood capillaries in a process called reabsorption. And substances that were not originally filtered out, that are actually waste products, will be moved from those capillaries into the tubules in a process called tubular secretion. Along the way, hormones like calcitonin and aldosterone and ADH will fine-tune the volume and the composition of the blood. We'll get into all of those details as we work through the chapter. Let's revisit blood pressure. As we have already mentioned, the variables that affect blood pressure are cardiac output, peripheral resistance, and blood volume. This means that the targets for your regulatory system, the nervous system and endocrine system, are the heart, the kidneys, and the blood vessels. In other videos, we consider cardiac output and how our regulatory systems can change stroke volume or heart rate to adjust cardiac output. For example, an increase in heart rate leads to an increase in cardiac output, which increases blood pressure. We've also looked at the effect of the diameter of the blood vessel lumen on blood pressure. Larger lumen means less resistance, less pressure, whereas a smaller lumen means more resistance, more pressure. Let's add blood volume to your knowledge of blood pressure regulation. If you have fluids in an enclosed system, like our cardiovascular system, the more fluids inside, the higher the pressure. The less fluids inside, the lower the pressure. Hopefully that will just intuitively make sense to you. To increase or decrease the volume of the blood, the kidneys can increase or decrease the amount of urine produced. As an example, if you drank a bunch of water, your digestive system would absorb it into your blood. That would increase your blood volume and therefore your blood pressure. The kidneys could increase your urine output to decrease that blood volume and therefore decrease your blood pressure. Let's investigate this. Most of the day, the activities of the kidney nephrons are just regulated intrinsically, meaning they sort of auto-adjust to keep things just working at the correct pace. But when systemic blood pressure needs to be adjusted, the nervous system and endocrine system can take control. Many hormones act to increase blood pressure. As an example, when systemic blood pressure decreases, the kidneys secrete renin. Renin causes a cascade of events that leads to the production of angiotensin II. Angiotensin II itself causes systemic arteries to constrict, which increases blood pressure. But it also causes the release of ADH, which results in the kidneys reabsorbing more water, which increases blood volume. And angiotensin II causes aldosterone release, which results in the kidneys reabsorbing more sodium and water, which also increases blood volume. So, ADH and aldosterone decrease urine output, but increase blood volume and therefore blood pressure. The nervous system can also act to decrease urine output. Sympathetic innervation to the efferent arteriole will constrict it, which will decrease the filtration rate so less urine will be produced. This conserves water and blood volume. There are not as many ways to compensate for increased blood pressure, but A&P is one. When blood pressure increases, A&P is going to cause increased filtration rate, which increases urine production, which then decreases blood volume. I doubt if you remember this fine point from your A&P1 course, but the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system does not innervate the kidney, so it cannot control blood volume. So, now that we have looked at the nervous system and endocrine system control of blood pressure via control of the activities of the heart, the blood vessels, and the kidneys, hopefully you've developed an appreciation for the complexity of blood pressure control and realize that the regulatory systems have a fine-tuned interplay when it comes to blood pressure homeostasis. For those of you going into nursing, it will help prepare you for learning about the plethora of different blood pressure medicines available. Well, that should get you started on your learning objectives for the urinary system. Contact me if you have questions. I'll talk to you again soon.